Welcome to Life Stories. Today, we have a powerful story about family, sacrifice, and reclaiming control. Meet Emily, a dedicated woman who spent years building a family business, only to find her hard work undermined by her own family. On her 28th birthday, Emily's world is turned upside down when she discovers that her sister has misused millions of dollars from the company, and her own father plans to give away her house. This is a story of strength, resilience, and the difficult decisions we sometimes have to make to protect ourselves and our future. Please subscribe to our channel to start today's story. My name is Emily Parker, and I'll never forget the day my family tried to take everything from me, without realizing I had already secured my future. I was 28, sitting in the heart of a family business I had poured my soul into for the better part of my life. It was a business that my father, David, had built from nothing, a chain of boutique hotels that we had nurtured over decades. From the age of 16, I had worked beside him, learning the ropes of the business with a dedication I thought would earn me his approval one day. But instead, all it ever earned me was the heavy weight of responsibility and sacrifice. I had always been the responsible one in the family, the one who understood what it meant to contribute and to work hard. My younger sister, Hannah, on the other hand, had always lived in a different world, a world filled with Instagram posts, designer bags, luxury vacations, and endless parties, while I was at the office managing 3 of our most successful hotels. Working 12-hour days, Hannah was out showing off her latest shopping sprees, seemingly having no care for the business or for the sacrifices I had made. My father, David, often reminded me that running a business like ours came with sacrifices. Emily, he would say with a sigh, this business isn't for the faint-hearted. You have to give up things in order to make it work. I understood that, even if it meant canceling plans and missing out on vacations, all to ensure the business was growing and thriving. But as I saw Hannah post pictures of herself lounging by private pools or enjoying the latest fashion trends, I couldn't help but wonder if my sacrifices were ever truly acknowledged. She's young. Let her enjoy life, my mother, Margaret, would say whenever I brought up how Hannah seemed to do nothing with her life but enjoy the luxuries I couldn't afford. She'll grow up and take responsibility eventually. But that day never came. At 25, Hannah was still living at home, without any real job. Her social media presence was her only claim to fame. And yet, she was treated as though she were the golden child. Meanwhile, I was managing everything in the family business, putting in the hours, handling contracts, and taking on burdens no one seemed to notice. Everything changed 6 months ago when we hired James, a new financial advisor. James was sharp, honest, and didn't mince words. He came into the company and immediately started reviewing our financial records. One afternoon, he walked into my office and closed the door behind him. His face was serious. Emily, he said, his voice low, I've been going through the company's finances for the past 5 years. Did you know your sister has spent over $2 million of company funds? My world stopped. I stared at him, hardly able to comprehend what I had just heard. He laid several documents on my desk: travel expenses, designer clothes, extravagant parties, all listed meticulously under marketing expenses. She claims she's the brand's image, James explained. I felt my stomach drop. This was too much to bear. For years, I had worked tirelessly to help grow this business. And yet, here was proof that my own sister had been draining it, living a life of luxury, all while masquerading it as an essential business expense. That night, I confronted my father. The words that came from his mouth were like ice in my veins. I know, Emily, he sighed, looking at me over the rim of his glasses. I approved those expenses. I felt a rush of anger, mixed with disbelief. What do you mean you approved it? $2 million in personal spending disguised as marketing expenses? David looked at me, as though the question was irrelevant. You have your way of contributing to the company, and Hannah has hers. That conversation changed everything. For years, I had worked myself to the bone, hoping one day to earn my father's approval. But it was clear now that I never would. The system was rigged. Hannah, with her frivolous ways, was always going to be the favorite in his eyes, no matter how little she contributed to the business. James became my confidant after that day. Over the next few months, we quietly documented every irregularity, every questionable expenditure, and every mismanagement. But something James said to me stood out the most. "You need to protect yourself, Emily," he warned me. "Your family is treating this company like their personal piggy bank. But you have more power than you think." It was then that I discovered something my father had never shared with me: the fact that I was the majority shareholder in the company. Years ago, for tax purposes, my father had structured the ownership of the company in my name. He never expected that I would understand the leverage I now held, nor that one day I would use it to protect myself and the business I had worked so hard to build. It felt like a revelation, a shield I had never known existed. I didn't just have to stand by and let my family walk all over me. I could fight back, and that's exactly what I was about to do. But first, I had to figure out how to stand up to the people I had always tried to please: my father, my mother, and my sister, the family I had spent my entire life sacrificing for. The day of reckoning arrived on my 28th birthday. It was supposed to be a celebration, a moment to reflect on my life, my achievements, and the milestones I had reached. But instead, it turned into something I could never have prepared for. My parents threw a large party at their estate, inviting extended family, business partners, and even some of our most important clients. The air was thick with forced smiles and tight handshakes. But beneath it all, there was a growing sense of unease inside me. I knew something was coming. We were in the middle of the evening. Toasts being made, champagne flutes clinking, and then Hannah stood up. A grin spread across her face as she held a crystal flute that, to my shock, likely cost more than I had spent on my entire wardrobe in the last year. She made an announcement, one that she clearly thought was harmless, one that would be greeted with applause. "I have a special announcement," she declared, her smile dazzling as ever. "My father has given me the most incredible gift, Emily's house." For a moment, time seemed to freeze. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. The room fell silent before it erupted into applause. My mother's face lit up with pride, beaming as if it were the best decision ever made. My father avoided my gaze, looking anywhere but directly at me. And my sister, she stood there, basking in the attention, entirely unaware of what she had just done. She thought this was just another routine family gesture, nothing more than a formality. But she didn't understand the weight of those words. She didn't understand what it meant for me. "You're right, Hannah," I said, rising slowly from my seat. My heart pounded in my chest. But my mind was clear. I am always at the office. And since we're making announcements today, I have one of my own. The room grew still, all eyes suddenly turning to me. Hannah, still smiling, was completely oblivious to what was about to unfold. I reached into my handbag and pulled out a folder, one that contained the information I had been quietly gathering with James. As CEO and majority shareholder of our boutique hotel company, I have a few important updates. I continued firmly. First, effective immediately, all personal expenses will require board approval, not just the president's signature. I looked at my father, but he didn't meet my eyes. He was trying to maintain his composure, but I could see the tension in his shoulders. Hannah's smile faltered as she realized something wasn't right. Second, I continued, my voice gaining strength. I have initiated a full audit of the company's financial records for the past 5 years. That includes all marketing expenditure related to social media. I locked eyes with Hannah, my voice unwavering. My father interrupted, his voice tense. "Emily, this isn't the time or place for this. Isn't it?" I shot back. "Didn't you just use my birthday party to announce that you were giving my house to Hannah?" I turned to the guests. Our extended family, the business partners, and the board members, who were watching with growing concern. A house I bought with my own salary. After years of hard work. I paused, taking a deep breath before continuing. I could feel the weight of what was happening. This wasn't just about a house. It was about everything I had put into this business. Everything I had sacrificed for the family. James stood up from his seat and handed out folders to the board members present. Inside those folders were the documents that would change everything. You'll find evidence of corporate fund misappropriation totaling over $2 million. I said, watching the room as murmurs began to spread. Personal expenses disguised as marketing costs. Luxury vacations falsely reported as business trips. Designer shopping sprees categorized as market research. I could see the shock on the board members' faces. Hannah turned pale, and for the first time, her smile was gone. "This is ridiculous," she sputtered. "Dad approved all of those expenses. I'm the brand's image." She threw her hands up, as though she couldn't understand why things were going so wrong for her. I raised an eyebrow, pressing a button on the room's presentation screen. A slideshow of Hannah's Instagram posts appeared. "Let's take a look," I said. The photos on the screen were proof. Vacations in LA labeled as marketing for family-friendly hotels. Designer handbags marked as market research. Hannah looked like she was about to lose control. "You're humiliating me," she cried. My mother stood up, her face flushed with anger. "How dare you humiliate your sister like this?" she yelled, her voice trembling. I met her gaze, unfazed. "Humiliate her?" I asked. "You tried to humiliate me by taking my house on my birthday." My father stepped in, his voice trying to regain control. "This is a family matter," he said, looking around the room. "I ask all non-family members to leave." James, however, wasn't having it. "I'm afraid that's not possible," he said, his tone cool and composed. "This involves potential corporate fraud. The board members have both the right and the obligation to remain." The tension in the room was unbearable. Hannah was crying, insisting it was all a misunderstanding. My mother was shouting about family loyalty. And my father was desperately trying to reassure the board members, who were now flipping through the documents in disbelief. I couldn't let it go. I had been quiet for too long. But now was my moment. The truth was out, and there was no turning back. The chaos in the room grew louder. But I stayed calm. There was no turning back now. The truth had been revealed. I had spent years working tirelessly, putting my heart and soul into a business that my family had taken for granted. Now, it was time to take control and rebuild. Not just the business, but the relationship I had with my family. It wasn't going to be easy, but it was necessary. After the initial shock settled, I cleared my throat, signaling for everyone to quiet down. The board members were still flipping through the documents James had handed them, their faces a mix of disbelief and concern. My father, once so commanding, was now slumped in his chair, the weight of his own actions beginning to catch up with him. My mother, still red with anger, shot daggers at me, but I couldn't let their emotions control the situation any longer. This was my moment, and I needed to seize it. "There's more," I said, my voice steady, as I reached into my folder and pulled out another set of documents. "As CEO and majority shareholder, I am making some executive decisions effective immediately." I took a deep breath before continuing. "First, all personal expense accounts will be frozen until further notice. Second, an external audit will be conducted on all financial transactions to ensure full transparency. And third, the executive leadership team will undergo a complete restructuring to align with the company's best interests." The room went dead silent. The air was thick with tension. My mother's face contorted with indignation, and my father's eyes narrowed in frustration. "You can't do this," my father said, his voice laced with anger, as he tried to regain some semblance of control. "You don't understand what you're doing." "Actually, I do," I replied, my voice calm but firm. "I'm the majority shareholder. Remember? You structured it that way years ago for tax purposes. Now, I'm using that power to protect this company. The company I've spent my life building." I could see the realization dawning on my father's face. He had never expected this day to come. He thought he could continue controlling everything behind the scenes, treating the company like his personal playground. But the tables had turned, and I was now the one in charge. The board members exchanged uneasy glances. And one by one, hands began to rise in support of the changes I was proposing. It was clear that the majority was behind me. My father, though, seemed to shrink into his seat. His once authoritative presence completely drained. It was a bitter pill for him to swallow. His grip on the company had slipped. And he knew it. At that moment, Hannah, who had been unusually quiet until then, suddenly lunged forward, her face twisted in rage. Her fists clenched at her sides. "What the hell am I supposed to do now?" she shouted. Her voice laced with fury. "You've ruined my life." I didn't flinch. I had fought for too long to let her words shake me now. "You ruined your own life, Hannah," I said, my voice cold. "You've never worked a single day in your life. You've spent millions of company funds on things that were never meant to be yours. You've taken everything for granted. And now, you have to face the consequences." She stood there, shaking with anger, her eyes wild with disbelief. "You're awful," she spat, her voice filled with venom. "I hate you. I'm not the one who's ruined everything," I replied quietly. "I'm the only one who actually cares about your future." Hannah froze, her rage fading into confusion. She didn't understand. She didn't see that everything I had done, everything I was doing, was for her too. But she couldn't see it yet. Maybe she never would. The next few days were filled with more tension and conflict. The external audit revealed even more financial mismanagement than we had suspected. Extravagant vacations, designer shopping sprees, and luxury parties, each of these had been falsely reported as business expenses. And my parents had been quietly funneling company funds into hidden personal accounts for years. It was clear now that the entire foundation of our family business had been built on lies. The board wasted no time in implementing the changes I had proposed. They voted unanimously in favor of my reforms. Strict financial controls were introduced. And a professional leadership team was brought in to oversee operations. The company was being transformed into something it had never been before, something that could actually thrive without being weighed down by the family's mistakes. As for Hannah, she lost her position as the face of the brand. It wasn't easy for her to accept. But it was necessary. The company needed someone who could genuinely contribute. Not just someone who was good at posing for the cameras. She stormed into my office a few days later, her face flushed with anger. "What am I supposed to do now?" she demanded. "You've ruined my life." I looked at her, unshaken. "There's an entry-level position open in the marketing department," I said smoothly. "Starting salary just like everyone else. You can learn the business from the ground up. Just like I did." Her face twisted with rage. But I could see the flicker of realization in her eyes. She had no choice but to accept the reality of her situation. For the first time, I felt a sense of peace wash over me. The business was on track. And I had set the boundaries I needed to. The family dynamics had shifted. And while it wasn't easy, it was necessary. I was in control now. And I was determined to make sure that the company I had worked so hard to build would continue to thrive. In the end, everything changed. The company was no longer a tool for personal gain. It became a place of true professional integrity. The board members who once followed my father's lead now stood by my side, supporting every decision I made. The financial controls we put in place ensured no one, family or not, could misuse company funds again. The company was growing, thriving in a way it never had before. And it was all because I had taken the hard step of reclaiming control. As for Hannah, things were different. She started working in the marketing department, taking on tasks she had never bothered with before. At first, she resented it. She couldn't understand why everything had to change, why her easy life had been upended. But over time, something shifted. She realized that there was something valuable in putting in the effort, in truly contributing to the business. She wasn't the star anymore, but she was learning, and that was a victory in itself. My parents, too, learned to accept the new reality. My father, though still reluctant at first, admitted that the company I had helped shape had become something even better than what he had built. My mother, who had always been so blinded by loyalty to Hannah, began to see the importance of hard work and responsibility. We weren't just family anymore, we were partners. With clear boundaries and a shared goal. The journey wasn't easy, and there were moments when I doubted myself. But looking back, I realize it was all necessary. Sometimes, you have to shake the family tree so the rotten apples fall. And the strong ones finally have room to grow. Today, I am proud of the company we've built, the boundaries we've set, and the life I've created for myself. Thank you for following my story. If you enjoyed it, don't forget to like this video and subscribe to our channel for more inspiring life stories. See you next time.